Hey guys, welcome back. I'm back here visiting my buddy Paul Berkahn. You might remember we featured his stunning 1964 Ford Falcon Rally Sprint in one of our earlier episodes. But Paul's got a new project, and I thought it'd be really cool to do a multi-part series on this project. It's a full-on restoration. It's a Mark I Ford Escort, 1970 Ford Escort. It became a race car from about 1972-73. So it was nearly a new car when it became a race car, and it evolved quite a lot over the years. Initially started out, it was a 1300cc car as standard. It was later repowered with a 1600 motor, which we assume was probably a twin cam. And then it became a sort of a sports sedan, a modified sedan. It was fitted with a six-cylinder Holden motor, which was later then turbocharged. And when that blew itself to pieces, a later owner then went to install, but never actually completed, fitting it with a Leyland P76 V8. It's a gnarly old thing. It's had a fairly colourful life, and the work that Paul has to do to bring this thing back to life is going to be pretty immense. But it's going to be a really, really cool little story to follow over the next several months as he progresses. But I just wanted to start off now and show you where he's at. He's owned the car for about 6 months or so, been doing quite a lot of work on it. But yeah, I just thought it'd be cool to start off here, and so you can see the car progress until it eventually goes back on the track again. So yeah, this is going to be really cool. So here she is, folks. She's a gnarly old beast, and this is going to be a project and a half. But I want to introduce you to Paul. He is the guy that's going to be bringing this thing back to life. And yeah, we're going to be following this over a series of episodes until the time that it's all finished. So yeah, g'day, Paul.
G'day. So bit of a project. Essentially, the car was raced, as Steve said earlier, modified for racing. So 4-link in the rear, originally rocket box, and originally it had this firewall in there until it was modified in later years when it ran the 6-cylinder and the V8. And the leftover firewall, which is what I had to remove, was there. And so basically, as a lot of cars were here in New Zealand, they were cut all the way right up to here, and all of that was removed, and that piece was in there. So into the brand new firewall and cowl and header panel and all the associated panels.
And I should point out, by the way, that Paul's doing this work himself. He's not farming it out to someone else. This is going on in his garage. He's doing all this work himself. So this is. And how long? When did you buy the car?
Bought the car in April.
April, right? Okay, so it's now
April 2022.
Okay, so it's now. And when did you actually get it home?
In April 2022.
Okay, so April 2022 was the 2nd of November as I filmed this today. So, and I can tell you that I did see this car when he first got it home, and the work that he's done already, the progress that he's made already is just phenomenal, because this thing was gnarly.
So so not only was the firewall and cowl all cut out, but half the dash was missing. So I basically had to replace all of the dash under here, under there. It had no steering box, had no steering column, had no, by the time I cut the interior out, so I've had to put a whole new gearbox tunnel in, and I'm just starting to repair the floors now. So you can see the other panel over there that I'm just putting in now, and new panels to there. But the car was garaged for 42 years, and the only piece of rust I found was about a 5mm hole in the whole car. There was zero rust in this chassis.
Amazing.
The chassis was so good, and the chassis rails, they still had the original silver colour of the steel. So
That's one of the good things about a race car, isn't it? They usually garage their entire life.
Yep. So the forelink needs to be improved in the back, and for some reason they were moved outboard, and I believe that might have been for the V8 diff. So the forelink will be moved back inboard to where it was. The original welding marks of where it actually was will be reused again. The original welding marks of where the forelink was is there. So that's the next job as I work further back into the car. And then there's just general repairs to a few little holes that were cut in the floor, and the odd 100 drill holes that are drilled into the bodywork that need welding up, and etc. But the car's strengthening up pretty well. Body's nice and square.
So the floor pans are original,
Correct.
but the transmission tunnel was cut to about where the gear shifter would come through up the top, isn't it? And it was all gone, wasn't it? That was all cut out.
That was how the size that they actually cut it out to fit the V8 and the 6-cylinder in there.
So was it going to be the engine was going to be set back within the chassis? Was it?
The V8 was set back. Yes,
yeah,
it was.
So there was a fairly sort of a typical period modification.
Yeah.
I think most regulations in New Zealand allowed in sports sedan category, which this car would have been built for, they allowed an engine setback of, I believe, up to about 12 inches from the stock location. So yeah, a big movement of the engine.
So the car will be built back to its original specification, the original Escort specification, which essentially will be Group 4, and all the body will meet those requirements. And it'll be done to the New Zealand specification. So we've got a New Zealand built Autosport race seat.
That's cool, isn't it?
That we're racing. So that'll be restored and reupholstered, but it's in exceptionally good condition. We've got some original Halliday racing rims, which are quite rare by today's standards. And these were a 3-piece alloy rim.
These are beautiful.
Styled upon the old BBS rims.
So this is for those watching. This is the Halliday brothers, Don and Rob Halliday. We actually featured their Mark I Escort, Freighter's Escort, in one of our earlier videos. But they, as well as building their own race cars, they actually built these incredible wheels. Like Paul says, modelled off a BBS. They're a 3-piece wheel. Really a beautiful thing. And there were a lot of cars in New Zealand that fitted these wheels back in the 70s and 80s, mainly because it was really hard to source the high quality European and American racing wheels. And so these guys just made these, but a lot of them are gone. They're just not around anymore. So these are an incredible find. And these are, what would these?
A host of different barrels available for these wheels. This one in particular has got a 3.5-inch barrel and a 5.5-inch barrel for set up for the front. But I've got a whole lot of other barrels, to run on.
So that's a 9-inch wide. Is that right?
Essentially, essentially it's round about 9 inches wide for the front, and I can run, I think, about 10.5 in the back.
Wow.
So
and those will fit easily, and that's what Alan Mann Racing and all Broadspeed, those teams that raced Mark I Escorts in period, they were running big fat wheels on these cars, and they'd fit a 10-inch wide wheel oftentimes under these fenders, and you can see it's got the bubble flares, the homologated bubble flares that these cars all came with. This car had fiberglass bubble flares, didn't it, as opposed to steel?
Yes. It had fiberglass bubble flares all around when it was built.
Yep.
And then later in life, someone decided to put some Mark II box flares on there, which you can see I've removed.
Yeah.
and I'm putting it back to the original bubble flare.
We've got photos of what it looked like when you first brought it home, haven't we? So we'll share a couple of those so people can see what you had to work with.
that's the original flare off the front, which is actually the same blue as the new flare.
Wow.
So I'm going
Cool.
to restore that and
Yeah.
use that. But the one on the other side is gone, so I'm going to do one new flare.
Yeah. This is another one there. So you've got 8 of the original Halliday wheels. They don't make them anymore, of course, so you can only work with the originals. I think this is about a 10-inch wide or so, this one, isn't it? So,
Around about there.
yeah. They're such neat looking
The
things.
tyre profile's too low for what the car
Yeah,
will eventually be.
that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
This is all the work and stuff he's been doing. Oh, this car ran now MkI Escorts had the fuel tank in the right side, didn't they? But this one actually, they ran the fuel tank in the left side.
Essentially, from what I can work out, it's probably just to balance the weight for the driver,
Yeah.
not having too much weight on both sides, but it's still quite a bit of weight in the back. So the idea is to get it built back to the original 70s specification.
Such a cool car.
And keep it within the Group 4 homologated regulations.
Yeah.
So
Group 4 and Group 2 as well. They ran these in Group 2. In New Zealand, we had Group 5, which this car might have been built to, which allowed a few more modifications, Formula 2 cylinder heads and things. These are the doors, aren't they?
yeah, fiberglass doors, and super light.
And completely gutted out.
Yeah, they're very, very gutted out. So there's a little bit of strengthening to do here just to keep it a bit more safer.
Yeah.
So and I'm going to put the like a panel down here so I can put the original door handle on there, and probably a grab handle in there somewhere just to comply with what I need to comply with.
Yep.
And but this car had minimal upholstery in it, so it'll probably still have minimal upholstery when it's built.
Yeah.
And it had a fiberglass hood as well, which is here, and a fiberglass trunk lid as well.
Okay.
So all all fiberglass panels all the way around.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. The work that just since I was here last, which was a month or so ago, maybe 2 months ago, the work that Paul has done on this car has just been amazing, and it's just there's so much that he's had to repair. I mean, the dashboard had been dropped 12 millimeters or some weird thing, hadn't it?
Couldn't understand why things wouldn't line up, but this dash had dropped about 10 or 12 mil, and and you could see from the 2 bolt holes on the left and right side, bolt in there and no bolt on this side, and so I re-lifted it back up and mounted it to the correct position and welded it into both seat A-pillars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. But so done the big chassis measurement and just fitting the reinforcing struts in here, not the struts, the reinforcing gussets. And
this was all stuff that was done to all the factory cars and the rally cars and everything in period, wasn't it?
Yeah, and started re-seam welding here and down the insides of the guards. You can see the weld there where I've started seam welding the body, and so I'll continue that through. Most of the body's been seam welded. Just keep it all.
Super cool car.
So here we go. This is my plan B for the car. So this is a 2-litre Pinto 205 block.
Well, what's plan A?
Plan A, I'd like to use a BD, but haven't.
BDA, BD.
BDA, BD, any kind of BD I would actually be happy with.
Yep.
So a BD engine would be just the bee's knees. So, but at the moment, this is the plan B, and I'll be working to the 2-litre Pinto motor. With 48 Webers, and it'll get a full race rebuild. So hopefully looking somewhere around 200 horsepower from the flywheel, and which might give me about 160, 165, 170 if I'm lucky. That's the rocket gearbox, that'll get a rebuild if I decide to use that, but I've just bought a ZF 5-speed, S5 18.3 5-speed.
Wow.
And so this one will probably just be shelved for the meantime, and so it'll be a new ZF bell housing with the ZF gearbox. So that's the basic setup.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, talk about the steering wheels.
Well, so this came in a heist of parts. It's an old personnel steering wheel, so you can see it's done a lot of work, and I think it's probably been in a lot of rallies. And so I would actually quite prefer to restore this, and I can do a bit of upholstery work. And so I may even peel all that off and just put all new leather around and restore all that and use that, because it's a beautiful steering wheel. They've got an amazing feel about them.
That would be super rare as well. I'm trying to remember what happened to the company personnel.
They're still around.
Did it become Sportline?
They still make them.
Do they? Yeah.
They still make them today. Very, very similar design, but they're probably not made in Italy where they.
Yeah.
So this is the genuine thing. So
original wheels.
I'm very, very keen to restore that.
Yeah.
And this is a bit of classic Kiwiana. So this is an old Wildcat steering wheel from the 70s.
New Zealand made.
Yeah, and I picked it up, possibly New Zealand made. I'm not 100 on that. But a lot of race cars used to run these, and so that's kind of plan B if that one doesn't work out. But it's got quite a nice feel to it. It's quite a nice wheel, so that's another option for the car.
Nice one. This is the rear end. This is the rear end that you've bought for the car, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a Group 4 spec Atlas rear end, limited slip diff. It's got the bigger axles in there, semi-floating, and running Mark III Cortina disc brakes. And
so this is all period stuff, isn't it? It's all period parts.
All period parts.
There's no modern parts, Willwood or anything like that thrown on here. This is all period.
And I don't want it.
No, no, exactly.
So the car will be built with all period parts, even the nuts and bolts. I'm quite funny like that. So I like restoring old original nuts and bolts. So so that's just part and parcel of it. So it's a cool piece of kit.
The big alloy plate on the back is neat, isn't it?
Yeah. So predominantly for rally, but I just think it's so cool. Predominantly for rally, but I just think it's such a cool piece of kit. I'm going to retain that. A little bit heavy, these diffs. I mean, compared to an English, they're a lot heavier. But what they've used here is they've used some caps off a block, cool. And I'm pretty sure they're off a 1500 non-cross flow. and so I'd like to retain them, but they're pretty heavy. But I may even
engine
machine some
caps. That's so cool.
That's
Kiwi ingenuity again, isn't it?
It's a bit of fun, yeah. So we've got a breather going on here, and so this will get a full rebuild. And currently it's running 5-1, but it's not going to do it for the circuit. So I'll probably run about a 4-1 gear in here, and I'll rebuild the limited slip diff. It's got a clutch limited slip diff in there, and we've got Group 4 axles on there, but they're a little bit too big, so I might put the next size down in there. And so that's the setup basically there.
So what's this?
That's just an aftermarket gauge. I think it was a Wildcat brand, and it came out of my Mark III Zodiac, and that was a Raymond Mayer's motor in that one. And this was a vacuum gauge. I used to use that to try and tune the carburetors, and an old 70s gauge there. And this was a slightly later model oil gauge that I had in another car, but I have got an older one to put in there.
So it's going in the Escort?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it'll be cleaned up and restored.
Yeah. You remember Paul's Falcon Sprint that we featured earlier, but So that's the first project, and this is what we're working on now. So this is going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun bringing this piece together and just seeing the progress as it all comes to life, and work. Paul's attention to detail and the quality of his work is really incredible. So this is going to be a beautiful car when it's finished, but not over restored, which is quite important. Won't be over restored. It'll still carry the character of an old race car, which is really, really important when you've got a historic car like this. But this thing's going to be really neat.
Many of its old battle scars will remain on the car, and so it'll be a very different build to how the Falcon was. Yeah. So I want to keep as much character and integrity in the car.
Yep.
But however, a new firewall and cowl was kind of necessary to bring it back
Yeah.
to where it was.
Yeah. Some things you have to replace. Some things, some parts just cannot be saved, no matter how much you want to keep them, and some parts are just too far gone. So so you got to do what you got to do. But this is going to be a really cool project.
You've got to have structure and integrity. So long as the car is nice and square, and the structure and the integrity is all there, then you're halfway home.
Yep.